Serious, they say people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad bosses. What made you leave? You/Holikamotherofgod responded. I had a boss who would scream in my face so often, I started to strategize how I would handle it when she finally hauled off and hit me. She never did, but she did eventually lose her job after being accused of child abuse. Edit. I quit before the child abuse stuff. And I will never, ever forget the day I quit, the grand boss saying, "We really value you, we're sorry to see you go." After years of working under an abusive supervisor, complete with formal complaints and documentation, that remains the most hollow thing anyone has ever said to me in a professional environment. You/Iron Artificer responded. Worked in an agency environment. Big clients and big expectations, but we had a fairly small staff for all the projects we took on. Late nights were expected and some nights I barely had time to eat before I had to sleep to go in tomorrow. Me and a few others tried to ask for structural change to get some breathing room between projects. We were always ignored by upper management and my boss. But, hey, they get us pizza after a big project, so we can't complain, right? I was tired, frustrated, and felt like I was just a tool for the man. We worked late and never got anything back from the company. So L sent out applications. Found a bigger company with a cool culture. They offered me a gigantic pay raise, plus better benefits. I went to my boss to hand in my resignation. I gave him 2 weeks' notice. This is somehow a 30-minute conversation telling me how miserable I'll be at this other company and how good I had it here. I hadn't even mentioned the name of the new company, so I knew he was talking straight BS. I went back to work, thinking I had my 2 weeks confirmed. However, my boss then pulls me back into his office and says he's going to let me go today. Like right now. Get your things and get out. I did so, never looked back. My new job is great, by the way. Better boss, better work, better life. You/Deleted responded. I had been running the restaurant for weekend nights for 3 years. These were not easy shifts. 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. Still, I was a night owl and it was my pleasure. I took some days off and went to a hot spring with my now wife. Upon driving home, I noticed my leg hurt and within 2 hours was in the hospital for an infection that would take 3 antibiotics at once to deal with. I called in sick 3 days in advance. My AGM told me it was cool, heal up, and that they would COA my shift. They did not. For my first infraction, I was put on final warning and 1 step from being fired. After all the years of work, I put in 3 weeks' notice the next day. Fuck you, illegal Pete's. Edit. It was Boulder. Pete's isn't a bad place, I still have friends who work there. They just chew people up and spit them out when they are done with them like the rest of food service. They have enough money to, not do that, but here we are. Just another burrito counter. You/Oryx 506 responded. Probably the worst boss I ever had was at a McDonald's. We had a younger manager for the first 10 or so months I was there, then they decided to bring in a second manager from another store. For the first week or so he was fine, until one day one of the 16-year-old girls that usually works drive-through was put on the grill for no reason. She got grease on her shirt and the manager said she looked like a pig and to clean it or go home. She left crying. The next day another underage kid asked to just get a drink of water after a 3-hour non-stop rush. The kid looked like he was about to pass out. The manager told him no, so he said he'd drink from the sink in the back. He told him if he did that he would send him home. I lost my shit when I heard that. Basically told him to fuck off and left, never went back. I heard that a month later he was fired. You/Deleted responded. As a nanny, it's weird when your boss is a mom with no actual experience in being a boss. The worst boss I worked for wasn't that bad when I first started working for her. Over the course of the year she kept adding more things for me to do. I wasn't just taking care of the baby. I became their maid too with no pay increase. Eventually it got even worse and I was basically her personal assistant. She got a taste of power and completely abused it. As a young 19-year-old it was hard for me to see how bad the situation was. It wasn't an overnight thing. I was eventually fired. The day after I was fired she called me asking where I was. By that time the job was so bad. I did everything in that house. From taking care of the baby to hand washing the mom's delicates. She got me a uniform and would reprimand me if it wasn't kept well. Same with hair and makeup requirements. She was a couple weeks pregnant with baby number 2 and would suggest I become a wet nurse for them. After I was fired I never went back. This lady flipped out and showed up at my house. You/War Karate F responded. My manager hasn't been great pre-COVID, But as soon as our company was forced to shift to mostly WFH, she lost it. She demanded unpaid overtime and is of the mindset that WFH is always going to be less productive than working in office, because she says she gets 1/4 of her own work done when WFH. She also volunteered our department as the pilot project to go back into the office when cases were at an all-time high, but she herself was not coming in. In addition, she has demanded higher standards and tighter deadlines amidst the pandemic, and does not support us even when our clients are in the wrong. We have had a lot of our team members leave for better jobs recently, and everyone is looking to do the same. You/Fortune and Glorikid responded. Currently trying to leave. I'm salary. If I work any amount under 40, she docks it. If I work over 40, get my salary pay. A few weeks ago I worked 2 days out of the week, then discovered I had been around a COVID positive person and I started developing symptoms. Work sent me home, I got a test and work had me stay home until I got the results 4 days later, negative. Even though I'm salary, my paycheck showed up hundreds of dollars less than normal and my boss didn't bother to tell me my paycheck would be significantly less. Luckily I went to HR and they told her she couldn't do that. She later called me and apologized, saying she didn't know she had to pay me. This, amongst many other terrible things she does, is why I'm trying to get out of there. You/Mabenomabe responded. My best friend and I worked at the same small company, under a horrific boss, think Miranda Priestley from The Devil Wears Prada, but with early onset dementia. My friend got a great new job and gave her notice. In an effort to get her to stay, our boss offered her my job. I don't know why the fuck she thought my friend would accept. She knew we were friends, we'd even booked off the same week of holiday to travel together. Of course my friend said no, and I handed in my notice the very next week. And I let her know why. I mean, there were 100 reasons, but I told her that was the straw that broke the camel's back. She had no idea until then that I knew what she'd done, and the look on her face was priceless as she tried to figure out some way to deny it. You/PeopleSuck11111 responded. I work home care, my boss is typically the family I work for. It's always the families that are the reason I leave. Never my clients. Families are the worst. The one that sticks out the most is a mom who got pissed off at me because I planned on taking a week off. I had worked for her for 5 years taking care of her very handicapped child. I don't get paid if I take time off. So I had planned accordingly. She told me that I needed to make that time up. That she had no idea what she was going to do with her child while I was gone. I was one of 3 to 4 homemaids, she had plenty of help. Told her I did not need to make any time up. I don't get paid for not being there, so it wasn't my problem, and I guess she would have to take care of her own kid. She didn't like that answer. I went on my vacation and decided I had had enough of her, so I quit. I felt bad for the kid. Wasn't a bad kid at all, spoiled rotten because of all the issues but otherwise a decent kid, but I could not take that mom anymore. After a week or 2 got new case, moved on with my life. But it's always the families that I hate. Never the clients. I have had some of the absolute best clients. Then it's just a matter of if I'm willing to tolerate their family. You/shorty_Kelly8615 responded. TIDR, boss does everything to make his employees hate him and then expects us to still want to work there. I've worked at my current job for over a year and a half. The reason I'm leaving is because I've worked my ass off for them, and the one moment I was trained for, I mean like 5+ months of training, they gave to their daughter ASAP. I also found out that I almost wasn't given my raise because the boss deemed my behavior as inappropriate, all from little things she could have corrected right on the spot. Like moving a box with my hands instead of using my knees. On top of the being called out in front of all staff, being told consistently that all the workers are replaceable, passive-aggressive comments even during a simple request, letting your family members get away with things I would get in trouble for, and saying they won't go anywhere while dwindling your work because they think you'll quit ASAP. Making our last floor manager quit because they put so much stress on her, coming in when your wife has COVID, telling employees that if you don't have symptoms that they need to come into work even though most customer are older people, and basically being yelled at least weekly will really make your employees hate you. You/Jack Silver 2000 responded. Had not one boss, but 3. Each would tell me how they wanted something done, and each would tell me that the other 2 were wrong. Finally got sick of getting my ass chewed all day every day, for doing what I was told. Finally caught the 3 of them together, talking with the owner. Politely interrupted, and pointed out what was going on. You, 1, tell me how to do something. You, 2 and 3, 2 say it's wrong. You, 2, tell me how to do something. You, 1 and 3, 2 say it's wrong. You, 3, tell me how to do something. You, 1 and 2 say it's wrong. And all of you chew my ass for it. Which of the 3 of you do I listen to? They stood there looking at each other, with the owner looking at the 3 of them. After a full minute I took off my work gloves, handed them to the owner, thanked him for employing me and quit. I heard from another employee that all 3 were later demoted, and the owner promoted other people to the positions, with better defined areas of control. *edited, grammar, spelling. You/Fantastic responded. Worked for a business for 3 years. Had a great relationship and reputation. The manager I worked with gets promoted and a new guy is brought in. Instead of trying to learn the dynamic on the department, he was a hard ass. Immediately we did not get along. I had a trip planned for a few months. I booked the time off well in advance and made the managers aware of the trip. Checked my schedule for the week and new guy scheduled me. I approached him and reminded him about my trip. He basically told me that I had to work now that the schedule was posted. I was not pleased. I went on my trip. He called and asked why I wasn't at my shift. I told him that I was on my trip and wasn't available. He threatened me with a write-up. I just straight up told him that I didn't give a shit and that's the way the cookie crumbles. I never went back. You/slimy scammers responded. A new hire didn't show up for their shift, fucking us over. They showed up 3 hours later and just stood there and didn't help up get caught up. Me and the other staffer stayed late to prep the next shift and clean. We told him to get us if he needed help and told him we were on the other side doing duties. He crashed, burned, and never came to get us. Our manager is a sexist asshole and sided with him and took our shifts away for 5 weeks before I just quit after being there for 8 years. This was the same asshole who told me I tried too hard to be a good employee, and got mad at me for working off the clock because my coworker was getting annihilated, couldn't keep up, and needed the help. He threw his keys at me, punched the ice machine, and made that poor girl suffer the rest of the night. This is also the same manager who asked girls if they were wearing panties and rated their bodies. The same one who was banned from a different location for being belligerently drunk, and the same one who asked why our other manager would hire a fat girl. So YA, great person to work for. You/3mtar3jvq responded. I could literally write pages about a former boss the company brought over from Europe who delegated most tasks to me and then took credit for them. We would have meetings and he would constantly interrupt to note that I would do fix, resolve, submit, whatever. Denied me the opportunity to interview for a promotion because he needed me to continue doing half of his job for him, and accused me of being disloyal. When I gave notice I rattled off a list of reasons why, and his response was to shrug and say okay, if you're going to be that way about it. Gave him a list of instructions how to perform certain tasks and run reports, and instead of reading it, gave to another employee and told them to call me at my new job if they had questions. A coworker who left around the same time was called in and told I don't see you being happy or successful at your new job, and that saddens me because we'll fill your position and you won't be able to come back. But good luck anyway. He later was promoted and sent to China, as if the company wanted him to F things up on every continent. The company itself had these initiatives where every few months they encouraged employees to submit ideas for improvement, then failed to implement any of them and blaming the employees for having bad ideas. You/Pili_girl responded. I was a software co-lead with 7 direct reports on a team of 20. Our manager micromanaged the budget so badly. We had to estimate development hours for our teams, about 18 months in advance. We had to explain all cost overruns and underruns that deviated more than 10%. So if I estimated that my team would take 600 hours for 5 new features and it took 530 hours, I had to write a variance report, and the reason couldn't be software implementation estimates are very difficult to do. Worst of all, if my estimate was too big for the budget, I had to revise artificially and take the overrun when, surprise, later we couldn't meet the estimate. After joining my team, we went from the least productive, always overrunning, months behind schedule, to the most productive for our project. When review time came, my raise was so paltry that our simultaneous change in health insurance benefits resulted in smaller weekly paychecks for me. That was my last straw. I left, and nearly doubled my salary. You/deleted responded. I left one job because the management was so terrible. Our division chief assumed that if he and other managers weren't micromanaging us, we wouldn't do our work. He was very against letting us work from home even though the job could be done 100% remotely. He only started giving us 1 day a week because the person above him forced him. We worked in an area with terrible traffic, one of the worst in the nation, so most people are understanding if their employees are a few minutes late. If we were even a minute late, we'd get a lecture that would frankly take more than the minute we had missed. Here's the real kicker, though. If we were late or took a longer lunch or something, we had to post on 3 different supervisor Outlook calendars and our own when we planned to make up that time. Even if it was 5 minutes. For example, I emailed all of my supervisors to ask permission to leave 4 hours early on a Friday because I was flying to a wedding. It was approved. I put on all the Outlook calendars when I was making that time up, coming in 30 minutes early, staying 30 minutes late for 4 days leading up to the trip. When I stepped on the plane, I got a frantic call from a coworker saying that one of the supervisors was looking for me and had no idea was going on a trip. I told him to tell her to check her freaking calendar. I had already put in my notice by then, so I didn't care if they got mad. You/boysfood too responded. I worked for a company that rents out office space to self-employed people, entrepreneurs, etc. One of my clients approached me about starting a business together that I actually was interested in. I had no clue it was against any rules, so I was really open about it. Like from conceptualizing the company to getting licensed to do what we do, to actually starting. My boss never didn't know, and never said anything negative about it. Fast forward like 6 months, and there was a new sales manager hired for the company that was a bit of a douche. Within 2 weeks of her starting, she became aware that I had a side hustle and reported me to HR. I go into work one Friday and see I have an HR call scheduled for the end of the day, which is never good. So me and my actual boss, not the sales lady, got on the call and I was told I broke a huge rule. I explained that I didn't know and further thought it was okay since I had been telling my boss about it for almost 9 months at that point. And yet HR still gave me the option to quit my side hustle and receive a final written warning from them, despite not having any other discipline in my time with the company, or quit the company. I think the fact that my boss at no point stepped up and defended me or acknowledged that she also hadn't known this rule was what made me thank them for their time and leave. You/Carlos the boss responded. I was a chef for years and want to get back into it. Look over on Kitchen Confidential. The other day one of the head chefs went onto the subreddit and stated that one of the kids that has worked there for a year or so and it's his last day tomorrow, what should he do to him on his last day? Some of the answers were unbelievable. Berate him all day. Lock him in the freezer for an hour when he's changed and ready to go, throw loads of flour, eggs and sugar at him. These are the people who LVE been working with all my life. I've seen people spit in customers' order only once though. An old guy called John used to force kids to pick up plates that had been under the grill all day and refused to let them use a tea towel. A guy Neil stuck some kid's hand in the fryer for 5 seconds to get rid of him. People breaking and stealing other people's equipment so they can't do their job properly. People lie about the time all the time and have no respect for hygiene whatsoever. There are good chefs out there but they're few and far between. Is this normal in other jobs? You/legit boy responded. Thinking about leaving. CEO is terrible to work with, shifts blame on everyone else. He just waltzes into my office and starts demanding I do random shit like pay phone bills when I'm a junior mechanical engineer. Has me do accounting, all ordering, all inventory management, work weekends, work late every day, report into him before I leave every day, all for just mediocre engineer pay. He's super inconsistent and can get super pissed for random reasons, like threaten your job. All this under the guise of we're a startup so we're still getting our shit together. We have 18 engineers techs but not a single PM, admin, or HR person. Everyone else is great to work with and the industry is super cool. Also I'm only 2 years out of college and made a huge career switch so I'm behind the curve as far as mechanical engineering goes, graduated with a computer engineering degree, so I'm not sure if switching jobs and staying in mechanical engineering is viable right now. You/Mustaines responded. I worked in a German bakery some years ago for a month that fits this incredibly well. The staff was some of the nicest people LVE ever met, the job paid better than most places and it had pretty good benefits. But then there was the manager. Holy shit, what an asshole she was. She was such a colossal cunt that if she visited Japan, the emperor would call Godzilla to help protect the country. On my trial shift, which she scheduled to start at 4:30 AM the night before, she screamed at me within the first 10 minutes because I didn't know exactly the places of all the pastries on the shelves or the respective names. She constantly made remarks about constructions workers saying they are always trouble when they came in, as if they are subhumans. She constantly screamed at me to do better, even when I wasn't doing anything wrong, and twice she called me a dumb idiot incredibly loud in front of the full bakery. I quit on the first opportunity one had and made sure to tell the regional director. It was a massive chain, everything she did to me and the other staff, and apparently I was the first person to bring anything like this up since they opened. You/deleted responded. I was hired on to a state government gig for a 6-month contract to hire at what would have extended out to $70,000 per year salary. Goal was to update their flagship site CMS from V2 to V4, a tumultuous journey because the CMS's structure and add-ons had changed significantly over those versions. It had been built years prior by someone who no longer worked on that team and had other responsibilities, so they had to bring me on as a subject matter expert in the CMS. I got it done in half the time despite the site being built like total garbage. The guy who built it did it as his first project in the CMS, and used the rest of the time to help them build additional functionality that was on their wish list. Come contract end, they have more they'd like me to do and other projects they'd love to have me onboard onto and helping with, so they offered to bring me on as an actual employee, at $60,000. They insisted it was the best they could do, and that they had to pull strings to get me there. I said yes because I had no other bites at the time, polished my resume, and kept my head down. The day after my official onboarding and HR training, my boss and his boss call me into an office for a meeting about how they're glad to have me on, and they expect me to pick up a lot more responsibility and do all these extra things like build reports and shit, after cutting my pay. I gave my 2 weeks the next day. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Leave your own stories down below, I would love to read them. If you would like to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe, it helps me out greatly.